dia. Muito bem. É difícil ver-vos, mas imagino que... Ok, agora vejo melhor. Eu tenho imenso gosto hoje, e vou fazê-lo desde já em português, nesta breve introdução à Vandana. Nós estamos aqui todos para ouvir, evidentemente, a Vandana e, portanto, acho que é uma experiência que vão registar, seguramente não vão esquecer. É uma pessoa incrível, uma pessoa que tem feito, é uma cientista, uma ativista. Ela reúne um conjunto muito amplo de argumentos que vão perceber rapidamente, mas é sobretudo uma pessoa que tem dedicado a sua vida a acreditar que é possível ter um mundo diferente, que é possível ter um mundo em que até a própria, digamos, economia pode ser diferente. Podemos deixar de contaminar os nossos rios, podemos deixar de contaminar os nossos solos, podemos travar a perda da biodiversidade, podemos evitar as alterações climáticas, podemos viver numa harmonia muito maior entre nós e o planeta. A Vandana tem esta qualidade única de ter percebido isto há muitos anos e de ter utilizado a sua ciência, a sua história, o seu percurso para ativamente trabalhar em prol deste desígnio. E com isto contagiou muita gente e é hoje ainda uma pessoa que trabalha intensamente com as comunidades, sobretudo com os agricultores, com as mulheres agricultoras, que ela acredita estão na base desta transformação das sociedades. E, portanto, ela preconiza uma agricultura diferente, uma agricultura que é capaz de produzir sem contaminar, que é capaz de produzir sem nos fazer mal à saúde, que é capaz de produzir chegando a todos e, portanto, e com isso também, enfim, direcionar o mundo para outra forma de estar e de fazer e de construir. Portanto, eu tenho imenso gosto em trazer hoje com a Planetiers, a Fundação de Serralves, a Universidade Católica, o Insure Hub, conseguimos, de facto, trazê-lo estes 2 dias a Portugal. E é um enorme privilégio como vão assistir. So I will switch to English because Vandana will speak in English, and I will, of course, in the end, if we have any question from the audience, it will be my pleasure to translate any question, but I presume that most of you will understand. So if we will give some time to Vandana I think she will open her heart as usual, and you will immediately understand and perceive how much of knowledge she can bring us and how much inspiration she can be. And Vandana, please, the floor is yours.
Helena, I think they want you to talk for 15 minutes.
No, because we are late.
Vandana,
no, I was very briefly in Portuguese trying to say that you were, for 5 decades, you've been promoting this idea that it's possible to do it differently, to farm in a way that is, we don't need to pollute the soil, we don't need to pollute the land, the water systems, that we can live in harmony with nature. That's, this idea of living in harmony is very powerful, and I think that you can argue better than anyone else that I know. So, and you can do it not only because you've learned, because you've studied, because you are also a scientist by background, but also because you've tried it, and so you've learned it with the communities and from the communities. And I think that message is very profound and very needed. So please, can you explain it, inspire this audience, these young people, is it really possible to do different? I mean, to promote another economy, to harmonize, with nature.
Thank you, Helena. So I will time myself by my watch.
Yeah, but don't bother with the time. Don't bother with the time.
Okay. Yeah.
Fake news.
Yeah. Thank you, and wonderful to see the young people here. Let me just quickly run through my own evolution of lessons from nature. I chose to study nature as a physicist, because in my time, that was the highest level of study. And then I went to the quantum world and did a PhD on non-locality in quantum theory. And a lesson from nature there was everything is interconnected. There is no separation in the world. Nothing is unchangeable. Everything is in constant dynamic change. And because change is the nature of nature, of course it's not like a billiard ball on a billiard table or a cannonball from a cannon. It is life in evolution, in interaction, in interconnectedness, in constant change. And then I got involved with a beautiful movement called Chipko in my region. I come from the mountains of the central Himalaya. This is where the big rivers start, the Ganges and the Yamuna. And even in our mythology, it says that it's the forests that protect the rivers. You know, my name is Vandanda Shiva. Shiva, the second name, is one of the names or one of the deities. India, everything is sacred. We have 300 million divinities because every blade of grass and every insect and every river and every mountain is a divinity. So the Ganges is a mother. And the mountains, the Himalaya, are our protectors. The story is that when the Ganges came down to the earth, she warned, she's powerful. And she'll tear the earth apart. And so Shiva had to put his tresses, which is the forests of the Himalaya, to break her fall. And the women of the Himalaya understood this. When the forest started to be cut, the landslide started. We get so much rain in our monsoons. In my valley, we get 4,000 millimeters.
4,000?
Yeah. And when the rain comes, if you don't have forest protection, it causes floods and droughts and landslides. And I'm sad to look at the landscape of Portugal because it's covered by a species that comes from Australia, Eucalyptus. And I did a study on it. And the very dry areas of India, it just sucked out the water. And it gives nothing back because the leaves of eucalyptus, when they fall, when you have a cold, you use eucalyptus oil to kill the bacteria, but the soil is full of life. And when the leaves and the terpenes fall, they kill all the soil organisms. The soils are dead. All the water is sucked out and nothing is returned to the soil. So from the forest, as well as the movement of my sisters, Chipko, who said, we're going to hug the trees. We will not let you cut them. 10 years, the movement carried on till we stopped the logging in the high Himalaya. And when a disastrous flood took place after a logging operation, the flood went all the way to Calcutta. And that's when the government realized that what they were making from cutting the timber was nothing compared to the costs of destruction with the floods and the landslides and droughts. And these in economics are called externalities. But in systems that are interconnected, no one is outside. No species is outside because we are all interconnected. The trees are not outside us because it's their oxygen that allows us to breathe. We are the soil. The word humus, the word for soil, Latin word for soil, is the root of the word human. We are soil. We wouldn't be here. So another very big lesson from nature is we are alive because nature is alive. Nature gives us the ecological processes that bring us life. Our breath, our water, drinking water, our food, the energy. And then I ended up looking at agriculture, not my chosen field. But in 1984, two terrible disasters took place. One was in the state of Punjab, which means the land of 5 rivers, prosperous, rich. There was violence everywhere. 15,000 people were killed. And that same year, a pesticide plant leaked in the city of Bhopal. I think this tragedy of Bhopal should be taught to every person in the world. 7,000 people died in one night. Children are still being born maimed. And today is the tragic death anniversary of our Prime Minister, who was then killed because she had sent the army to Punjab to quell the violence. So she was killed by her security guards, who were 6. And by the end of the year, I'm asking myself, why is there so much violence? What are the roots of violence? Why are people dying in Punjab? In a state where I studied there, it was peaceful. I used to walk to university, not be worried about a bomb, not be worried about killing. So I applied my quantum brain. I said, what is the context of this violence? Because there are 2 ways you can understand causality. One is mechanical and Cartesian. One thing leads to one consequence because everything is separate. But in interconnected systems, one thing doesn't lead to one consequence, multiple consequences. And the context is multiple forces acting together. So I went to the roots of what was common between Bhopal and Punjab, the chemical industry. Where did the chemical industry come from? Hitler's Germany. Why did they make chemicals? Why did they make Xylon B? Why did they make the poison gases? Why did they burn fossil fuels at high temperature to make explosives and also make the chemical fertilizers? So I realized that every input in agriculture that's an agrochemical input is actually a derivative of a war chemical. And that's why it causes so much harm. That's why our bees are dying. That's why our soils are dying. That's why the birds are dying. Rachel Carson wrote a brilliant book called Silent Spring. Mm-hmm. And it was the beginning of the environment movement in the United States. But in Europe right now, you have a farm-to-fork strategy, and one of the initiatives really is to reduce the pesticides and increase the biodiversity and agroecology. And I hope all of you will become active, because if we sit passively and do nothing, there are others who make money, who are very active, and who undo every good policy. There's a huge attempt to undo the farm-to-fork policy, and the argument is constantly being used, oh, we'll starve. We will starve. Not true at all. I spent 40 years of my life studying food systems and practicing a non-violent way of farming. What's a non-violent way of farming? Farming with nature, not violating ecological laws. And how does nature work? Nature works through biodiversity. She never works through monocultures. Nature works through cycles. She doesn't work through linear extraction of just taking and taking and taking. Nature does not work through competition. She works through cooperation and symbiosis. Nature works through flows of interconnectedness. In fact, the water cycle is a flow, the nutrition cycle is a flow, every ecological cycle is a flow through ecosystems. And maintaining those flows is doing ecological work. Even when you want to do business, your activity must be part of maintaining and regenerating the flow. Why do I use the word regenerating? Because not only does nature have the ability to maintain systems, She has the power to regenerate and recreate. Every living system is a regenerative system. I save seeds. That's my big work now. And the movement I started, called Navdanya, started when the Monsantos of the world wanted to own the seed and patent the seed and genetically modify the seed in order to take a patent. And I said, but the seed is not your machine. The seed is not an invention. The seed is the continuity of life over millennia. It holds the past and it holds the potential for the future. And the right to save and exchange seed is a fundamental right of farmers. In India at that time, 80% of the seeds came from the farmers themselves. And saving them and sharing them was their basic right. So I said, I will defend seed freedom. I will fight for the seed to be free to evolve in interaction with other species. I will defend the rights of farmers to save and exchange seed. That's how Navdanya started. We saved seeds, we created community seed banks, 150 community seed banks we've created. And I just saved every seed we could find. In these seeds were salt-tolerant seeds that helped us recover cyclones when the salt came from the sea. In our seeds are drought-tolerant seeds, the millets. I call them forgotten foods because they had been wiped out of farming. We had been told they're primitive. We had also been told they're backward because they're black grains. And we're ruled by white superiority. So I started a campaign called Black is Beautiful to get to people to celebrate the black breads we would make with our millets. Millets take 250 millimeters of water compared to the 2,500 for chemical rice. That's why we have a water crisis right now. But the millet or the old varieties regenerate the water because they produce a lot of organic matter. When you put organic matter back to the soil comes alive. The soil organisms come alive. When you put organic matter back in the soil, it holds water. For 1% water, for 1% organic matter, 160,000 liters. You don't have to have a drought. And climate change can be faced through the resilience the seed diversity gives you, as well as the soil diversity gives you. That's our work. Our work is showing that we not only can we mitigate climate change, but the best way to adapt to it is through biodiversity. The earth gives us a lesson. The lesson of the earth, everyone is panicking about a warming climate. Everyone is panicking. Young people are in perpetual trauma on climate change. But if we just look at our own evolutionary history, this planet over 4 billion years transformed a hot planet into a cool planet. 290 degrees to 13 degrees centigrade. And a carbon dioxide of 98% to 0.03%, just imagine, 98% to 0.0, through what? Through her technology of photosynthesis. Microbes and plants started to absorb the carbon dioxide with the help of the sun. And through the plants and the soil, put the carbon where it belongs and gives us life. So the biosphere regulates the climate. We came through a settlement that's called Gaia. Gaia is the Greek name of the earth goddess. And James Lovelock was the NASA scientist who named the earth Gaia when he realized she regulates the climate. He did lots of experiments as a NASA scientist and found that the earth regulates the climate. And where does this regulation come from? From the biosphere. So we've destroyed the climate through 3 means. First, we destroyed the biosphere and the capacity for the earth to work her cycles. Second, we tried to get rid of living systems and put fossil fuel as a base of everything, including the food we grow. 50% greenhouse gases come from an industrial, globalized food system that's making the earth sick and making you sick. shifting to ecological food and giving up junk food is the single biggest thing you can do for the planet and for your health. 75% diseases come from the same system that's giving us 50% of the greenhouse gases and destroying 90% of the biodiversity. We can regenerate the biodiversity, heal the planet, and we've done lots of experiments on this. The temperatures come down with the density of plants. The productivity goes up. Our research is showing that we can feed 2 times the planet's population by regenerating biodiversity. But for that, we must measure the nutrition in the food. And the nutrition in the food begins in the soil. You give the soil more food, the soil will give you more food. The mycorrhizal fungi, they are my teachers. Lessons from nature, be like a mycorrhizal fungi. Small, interconnected, picks up the nutrients where they are and brings it to the plant that needs them. There's new experiments showing that they bring it to the plant that's deficient, the right amount of nitrogen, the right amount of magnesium, the right amount of calcium, working with amazing intelligence. It's called the World Wide Web, and the soil food web is smarter. There's more neurological activity going on in the root of the plant. Much more neurological activity. In one plant, there's more brain activity going on than in the human brain. And in our gut is where the real neurological activity is going on. Our gut is being called the second brain, because now they're realizing that the gut microbiome is the key to health. And the gut microbiome's health depends on the health of the soil and the health of the plants we eat. So we are living in an abundant, generous, biodiverse world that's interconnected. And our work is to build on those interconnections, to learn lessons of how living systems work, how life's flows work. And from those lessons, do the science we want to do, build the economies we want to build, live the lives we want to live in freedom that is interconnected to other life. Because if we've destroyed the forests and the species, we won't have freedom either. Our freedom depends on nature. Our life depends on nature. And that is our work, no matter where we are, no matter what you choose to do, and I wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Obrigado. Vamos continuar a nossa sessão e a ideia aqui é estabelecer um diálogo. E por isso, enquanto vocês começam a pensar nas perguntas ou nos comentários que vão partilhar com a Vandana, em todos, I will ask Susana to give the first comments or questions regarding the presentation, and we would like special to thank Susana because it's directly responsible to have this amazing audience for us. Please.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you all the teachers that made this possible. This is truly important, and I hope that you gain a lot of new perspectives that you can discuss back to your schools with your teachers, your colleagues, and think of how you can make impact in your lives and in others' lives, and really shape the future, because you are the leaders of the future. So think about this session and what we are about to discuss, and later on how you can apply it. Well, thank you, Vandana. It was so nice and so inspiring to hear from you. And well, I'm thinking of a lot of ideas, future of food, revolution. But going to the main question, and that we all are concerned about our world. Within 50 years from now, more or less, we'll be reaching around 10 billion people in the world. Considering, for instance, that 96% of mammal biomass in the world comes from either humans or our own domestic animals, which is kind of odd, considering that only 4% comes from wild animals on Earth. And having this scenario, how is it possible to feed 10 billion people? Being regenerative, of course.
You know, I don't see history or evolution as linear, just like I don't see life as linear. You know, when the British ruled us and extracted from us, they left us with 60 million people less because of the famines. You know, so with the disasters, populations can come down. It's not just that populations will grow up. Right now, I see in rich countries like England, like in America,
Like Portugal.
large numbers are dying. Large numbers are dying because of drug addiction, because of homelessness. People have lost hope for the future. So that it'll be 10 billion is not inevitable. Second, it is so wrong that animals were put in what I call prisons in factory farms, because that's where the money was. The world did not get up and say, give us factory meat. Nobody was asking for it. Just like nobody was asking for GM food. These were places to make profits. And in the feed industry, it's the subsidies for animal feed that drives the factory farming. I've studied the shrimp factory farming and seen the shrimp feed industry is what drives it. And they capture fish at sea and feed 10 times more fish to the captive shrimp, and then create pollution and destroy the water, destroy the land, destroy the farming, but destroy the oceans too. 7 times more land than Europe's land is used for animal feed outside Europe. And the Amazon is being destroyed. The Amazon, which is home to so many wild animals, is now being destroyed for animal factories. It is not necessary, and the way to solve this issue is first and foremost, you all have to begin a new movement to say the tax money that is given as subsidies to industrial agriculture, to pesticides, to fertilizers, to factory farming, that money should be used to creating a future. And that future means we must have very big occupations for young people to regenerate the earth. You know, in the 1930s, there was a disaster in America. It was called the Great Depression, and it also had a dust bowl. The soil was destroyed. It was called the Dust Bowl. And Roosevelt put a very good proposal. He said, I'm going to put people to work to regenerate the land and save the soil. And this way they will have employment and they will overcome the depression. So he addressed the Dust Bowl and the economic crisis at the same time. We need a redirection of public money from subsidies for factory farming and chemical industrial agriculture that is causing all the problems to support. I don't call it a subsidy, because citizens' right to create a good life with their own money is not a subsidy, it's the right policy. It's support. Subsidy is when you take something negative and make it viable. Chemical farming would never have been possible without subsidies. Half your tax money in Europe goes for subsidies for industrial agriculture. Because why would anyone adopt a farming system that takes 10 times more energy, 10 times more finances, 10 times more resources to produce bad food that makes you sick? So how do we deal with the human population and its food needs? By first and foremost, reclaiming what food is. Food is health. Food is nourishment. Food is not a commodity. A commodity can go for biofuel and animal feed, but food is what nourishes everybody. So we've got to reclaim food. The second is, because industrial agriculture was designed for chemicals and for monocultures, that's why we've reduced our diet from 10,000 species to about 10 globally traded commodities. We need to bring biodiversity back in our diet. And as I said earlier, our research in Navdanya, and I hope some of you will come and join us at courses or as interns at the Earth University. You can write to Earth University at navdanya.net or write to me through Helena and the others who have brought me here. Our research is showing that the more organic farming you do, the more fertile the soil becomes. The more fertile the soil becomes, the more the mycorrhizal fungi is able to feed the plants. Your food has more nutrition. Industrial food is nutritionally empty. You might be eating it, but it's not giving you the nourishment. 70% to 80% nourishment is gone. And our work is showing that by saving seeds of nutrition and growing soils with rich nutrition and health, we increase food production. And then we intensify. The word intensification is usually used to intensify chemicals. But if we intensify biodiversity instead of chemicals, per acre we grow more food, because that's how nature works. Nature works through biodiversity, through give and take. When you grow a wheat plant with a cereal, with a legume, the legume gives the nitrogen, and the both can work together. This kind of symbiosis was part of agriculture. So we can feed more than 14 billion people, but we shouldn't become 14 billion because other species should be there too. But even today, there's enough food in the world to not let anyone go hungry. It's just that most of it is going for biofuel and animal feed and being wasted. What we need is to grow real food on less acreage with more biodiversity while we solve the climate problem, while we solve the extinction problem, and we solve the food and hunger problem.
Thank you very much. Who from our...
Just one other little thing. You know, one thing each of you can do if you're passionate about climate, or you're passionate about biodiversity, or you're passionate about food, or justice, whatever you're passionate about, grow a garden in your school. Grow a garden. Because that's where all the solutions start.
Who from our VIP young guests wants to address a question to Vandanda?
You have there.
Good.
One.
Okay. Hi, so my question is, and I hope you understand my English, obviously, but my question is, I obviously agree with all of what was said, and my question is, and now I go directly to it, how we convince every company in the world to lower their profits, obviously, to make it more natural and more healthy?
I think the issue is to first do the economies, to build the economies and then do the real calculus of real profits and real costs. We haven't done the true cost accounting. We've externalized all the costs. Let the earth bear the burden, let the other people bear the burden. So it's not that there are profits. There's an extraction for a few people. And the way to change their thinking is to let them see the interconnectedness of the system, to let them see they're part of their community, they're part of society. A business is not outside society. And then to remind them that we as human beings are part of the earth. They too are part of the earth community. And to constantly keep in mind the benefits they bring to nature and society, and make that their cost benefit. That's the kind of cost benefit we do, where we help farmers shift their calculus. And when the farmers shift their calculus from extracting, they actually end up earning more overall through all the positive externalities that they create. That's the way, through systems thinking and ecological thinking, we will change the mindset, and that mindset change will change the dominant economy to make it a renewable, circular, shared economy.
Thank you very much. Another question?
I'm not a student, sorry. So I'm Marta Cortegano. I'm from Terra Sintrópica and from Esdim. My husband is a farmer, and I'm co-leading a process, a grassroots process in Baixo Alentejo, in Mértola, that is the driest place in Portugal and with worst soils in Portugal.
200 millimeters, just for you
Yes.
to know.
So first of all, Vandana, it's really a pleasure to hear you. You're an inspiring person, not just because of what you are saying, but mainly because of what you are doing in the world. So thank you for that. So my question is, in Portugal, our soils have been depleted for centuries, historically, and nowadays farmers really need to do the transition. And I think many of them, they want to do that transition. But the knowledge that they have, that actually their parents had too, because they were already sons of the Green Revolution, so they just know to do how they are doing nowadays, that not that traditional knowledge are lost, many of that knowledge. And what they know is what their consultants and the academy provide to them that had nothing to do with lessons from nature. So sustainable intensification, the biotechnology seems the only sexy solutions that we have nowadays. And for instance, my husband that is a farmer, he's...
Marta, please,
Yes,
we
I
don't
go
have
to the
too much time.
question,
Go
but I
directly
need
to the
really to
question, please.
contextualize. Thank you, Luis. So my husband, he's farming using agroecology in this very difficult context. But we see that even if we are doing the kind of agriculture that we can produce a lot of food, improve microbiology, improve biodiversity, we try to bring the academy to study and then to help other farmers to do this transition, and it's very difficult. So the question is about that. So how can we bring the academy and science to study the agroecological solutions that we have in the field, that are really solutions that we can see that we could use and that they don't want to study? And also for these students, for these young talents that are here, so how we can bring them and show them that more than sustainable intensification and biotechnology, they can adhere to the nature, to have these lessons and to study that and bring these solutions for farmers.
You know, as I mentioned, I started my engagement with agriculture because of 1984. And I used whatever background I had in science and systems thinking, but I went to the peasants, I went to farmers to learn. And out of that grew this amazing knowledge. But we are in a very beautiful moment, you know, that here's all the resurrection of traditional knowledge, showing that indigenous people think in systems. They think in terms of interconnectedness. And 80% of the biodiversity today is on 20% of the land where indigenous people are, because they learn from nature and we can learn from them. But the second thing that's happening is, even though a group of companies that made the chemicals in Hitler's Germany and continue to make them for industrial farming and continue to take control of the seed through patenting and GMOs, actually there's so much research happening in disciplines that are not controlled by the corporations. If you look at what they control, because it comes in the BBC, it comes in CNN, it looks like they've taken over the knowledge system. But if you actually meet people like Helena, do the research yourself, read the papers. Who's publishing the papers on mycorrhizal fungi? Scientists.
Scientists.
Who are showing that here is the answer to hunger. Here is the answer to climate change. 1/3 of the emissions can be stored in the mycorrhizal fungi. 1/3 emissions. And we work with clumsy technologies like carbon sequestration by carbon capture by these big giant factories. So there's a convergence. There's a beautiful convergence.
Very nice.
People are starting to realize nature's living, nature's intelligent, we can learn from nature. And that is a whole new awakening.
Yes.
Amazing new books being written on plant intelligence. I saw their books out on sale, on biocivilizations, on the living earth. My own books try and communicate that. Second, a resurrection of indigenous knowledge and its value. And third, emerging ecological sciences
Yes.
of living systems and biodiversity. That convergence
Yes.
is where the shift will come from. And we need to find partnerships wherever we can.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank
Good.
you very much.
Very nice.
We are on the last.
Fully agree with you. But good.
We are already in the end of our session, but I can take one more question from our VIP young guests. We have there
We have
one, only one. Then you need to choose, please.
VIP and young, it's a good combination.
Meanwhile, about externalities, and for the first question, if anyone wants to know more about externalities, I'll be glad to chat with you between our lunch afterwards.
I have some questions. I hope they will be short. In terms of climate change and this big focus on companies and rationality, there's this idea that's floating around that we can just convince companies that ecology is needed and rational. And I feel like this historically has failed quite a lot, especially this reminds me of the 19th century with the utopian socialists like Fourier and Saint-Simon, who believed you could rationally explain to corporations why they needed to have all kinds of rights for workers. And my question is, do you think that the solution for ecology and for the environment is rather to be found in sort of social, especially indigenous movements emerging from these problems, or that we can convince that the current system that another way is more rational? And another question specifically, I'm really sorry, but on
Please.
Yeah.
the question of indigenous knowledge, is there any way that we can truly incorporate things from indigenous knowledge with the scientific developments of our modern societies?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, I think it's only in the last 30 years, which is actually before your lifetimes, that corporations have been put at the center of the world. We used to have businesses, and they were part of society. And they were regulated by national laws and democracy. And then we had World Trade Organization and globalization and neoliberalism, which said the only entity that is powerful and exists is the corporation. But the corporation is a fiction. It's a construct. There's brilliant books written on the corporation and films made on the corporation. It's a construct. Began with the East India Company, with a charter signed by Queen Elizabeth on the last day of December 1600. Yes, we have economies, yes, we have businesses, yes, we have society, yes, we have nature. But the corporation at the center of our universe is a new construction, and we must put that aside. Corporations are not the center of the universe. They might be the biggest drivers of destruction.
Yes.
But to be a destroyer is not to be a creator. To create, you must care. To create, you must co-create. To create, you must know. So I don't think our work is to convince criminal corporations. And I use that word because they are engaged in crimes against nature and crimes against humanity. When 7,000 people die in Bhopal, Union Carbide is responsible. So we need to convince ourselves. We need to learn more. We begin with ourselves. And as Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. Yeah. And when you learn from nature, So when you learn from nature, nature teaches you diversity, nature teaches you circularity. Indigenous people learn from nature. And the principles that they learned through their lives are the principles being reaffirmed by ecological science. The principles of symbiosis, diversity, interconnectedness, these are the basic principles. You talked about the rationality. How is it rational to destroy the very conditionals of our life? There's nothing more irrational than destruction.
Yes.
And this linear rationality of the Cartesian kind, that all there is in the world is dimension and weight. There are no qualities in the world. There's no life in the world. That banishing of life and quality is where rationality then becomes measurement through narrow indicators that treat destruction as creation. Growth. What does growth measure? Cutting down the forests, destroying your health. The sicker you get, the bigger the big pharma makes money. That growth is an illusion. What should grow is life and well-being and happiness in society and the earth. So it's time for that irrationality that has paraded as narrow, mechanistic, reductionist, Cartesian rationality to say you've done enough harm. Our minds are capable of more thought. Our minds are capable of ecological relationships. And we will develop the ecological mind for the future. That's what you have to grow in your lives.
Good.